Ready? Okay,
We present?
ready.
I guess. Okay, I'd like to bring the City of Parma Heights Planning Commission meeting of Monday, May 3rd, 2021, order at 5:30 PM. Roll call, please.
Kelly, Stavoli,
Here.
Litton,
Here.
Schwackenwald,
Here.
McCall.
Here. Okay, please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, we're going to start this Planning Commission meeting by closing this regular Planning Commission meeting and opening a public hearing to discuss the conditional use of application for Extreme Auto Pros. Mr. Patton, who do we have?
Not here yet, but,
I found it.
okay. Well, this is just a public hearing. I don't have any communication from
Okay.
anybody other than, that are here today. No one has contacted me regarding this, so it's open to the public now if they have anything to say.
Got it.
Should we sit? You guys want
Please,
to stand up?
please,
Sit. This
please
is a
sit.
public hearing. Fantastic, thank you.
I received nothing in my office either, because we sent out letters to the contiguous.
So gentlemen, this is a public hearing to discuss your wanting to have the car sales on your lot. Do we have anything from outside for the public hearing?
Is there anything listed?
I'll double check, but I don't see anything.
No, nothing listed.
Okay, have any other words that you'd like to say? Nothing prepared?
We're excited.
How long we wait? Give them a minute or two. Just so you guys know, we'll have a discussion after the public meeting on this proposal. We'll be able to take questions and have discussion after the public session. We'll give the public a couple of minutes to chime in.
While we are doing so, we could verify this public meeting was posted properly.
Yep.
Proper notice was given of the public hearing. And has the city received any correspondence regarding this public hearing?
No.
Nothing.
Want Mike to speak after this,
Yes.
after we
Before
close the
Chris-
public hearing, before we start with,
Before you start with Chris Hoffman.
okay.
Well, he's gonna introduce Chris.
What?
He's gonna introduce Chris.
Okay. Okay, one last check?
Nothing.
Nothing. Okay, I'd like to close the public hearing and reopen the Planning Commission meeting. Now, folks, if you have questions for the gentleman from Extreme Auto Pros,
Mr. Chairman,
yes, sir.
there were 9 items listed for the conditional use that were brought to the Planning Commission. They can add to, they can subtract, they can remove, they can do what your pleasure is with them. So strictly up to the commission, your thought process.
Are you talking about the general criteria for conditional uses? Is that what you're?
No,
The recommendations.
The memo from,
there's
Oh,
a
the
memo.
memo from Mr.
Yeah.
Got it. I think, Pat, and I think the one thing that I was just asking is what kind of processes there going to be to, in any conditional use, this is new to the city, right?
Correct.
So what kind of processes are going to be put in place as a kind of a check and balance? Is it going to be a quarterly? Is it going to be every, half a year, every year that we monitor, these conditions so that one day we don't wake up and say, oh boy, they're not meeting these conditions, what are we going to do? Where if we see one or two out of place and say, okay, we've told, this is what you've agreed to, either you got to scale it back or you got to modify to meet these. And, I just want to know what that mechanism looks like so that when this does get approved or gets voted on, what's next?
One of our inspectors, this would be something quarterly that would be, checking up to see where everything's at, but also the inspectors are in here every week. So they'll also be keeping an eye on how things are. So if something was to change that stands out, we'll see it.
Got it. And I know that there's a lot of vehicles moving in and out of there that are not for sale and that are not going to be tagged. And I'd just be kind of curious to see how those are going to be, how those are going to be identified versus something that they have coming, that they are going to bring in. Does that make sense?
Yes, I did talk to Abe about that, and he said that he would come up with something before this is passed on how to identify a car that's there for detail, service, or other than for sale. That car would, there'd be something on it that you would know that's what it is.
Perfect.
Yeah, so in regards to that, I appreciate the question, very good one too. And for the sake of organization in our business, obviously with 3 acres sitting there, the couple of ways we came about it is we would partition certain areas for certain things, like, hey, the cars that are pending service are here, the cars that are pending detail or whatever are right here. And the other way we said we can do it is if it's pending, if it's not for sale, then and it's here for service, then we could mark the windshield with the kind of markers that could put a star in the top corner of the windshield. Then we could scrape it off when we bring it in for service. At least you can kind of identify, if you drove through the lot, you know what belongs to what division. To simplify things.
Okay. One of the things that stuck with me the last meeting and kind of was in my head was when you said something about an overflow lot. When you hit your dealers are busy, they like to bring, cars to you because you guys do good work and manage that, the cleaning of them. But what we don't want is to have cars sitting there that are not, going through the process. We don't want it to be a storage lot, right? That's not what we're approving here. We're talking about approving here.
Right.
What we're talking about approving here is you to have the ability to sell cars within the context of the building, right? Not storing cars in the lot. So that kind of stuck with me a little bit the last time we were talking, that, they like, because you guys have that ability to do that and do a good job as well. So I didn't know if there was any kind of agreements that you would be their overflow, but I don't think that that's what we're approving this for.
Yeah, I apologize if that came,
Yeah.
we don't store any cars for any of the
Right.
dealerships. So if you're looking at the building, you see the showroom extends to the left to
Right.
the south. So that part right there is all incoming cars for detail from the dealerships. Then the right side is customer parking right now, and then customer detail. So those will all have hard plates, and that'll be like me, the manager's park there. And the bottom, the hill that goes down, so the river's in the back, that's where we have our workers parked back there. And then towards the building, so if you're looking the same way, towards the building, where the guardrail are, those are all outgoing cars that have been final inspected or are ready for photos.
Got it.
That's how we have it sectioned out right now. And then obviously the front showroom would be where we, inside is where we have our personal cars that we're selling. And then, so again, looking at the building, we have a big garage door going out. To the right would be, we have 6 spots, and those are all cars that are being, that will be serviced. So for the future, that's how we have it. So even our workers, we know what's going on when we come onto our lot, so we have it sectioned out in that way right now.
I appreciate the clarification, thank you. I have no further questions.
Number 6, about window signage. I noticed that when I went by there today that there was a list of things. I think you list things that you do there
Correct.
on both sides of like the front doors.
Yeah, we have it in 3 sections. So the far south side, the building of the showroom, the north side, and then in the middle.
Okay.
We have those, yeah.
Have those, has that signage gone through the sign code, or will that be something that will happen, or how does that work? I don't know.
When I spoke to, I forgot who the young lady was, Florence, it wasn't you, was it?
Suzanne.
No, it's probably
Suzanne,
Suzanne.
that's who it was. When I spoke to her, and what I did is I measured the whole entire building, and we're allowed a certain percentage of the square footage there, and we met all of that.
Okay.
Yeah.
And if we do any other signage, it'll go through the city limits.
Mhm.
There's a lot of, we believe the city told us it was 25%, this says 10% amounts. I could be wrong on that. I thought it was 25% of the building could be signed, but that includes everything that we have existing right now, and if we wanted to add something.
Gotcha.
Like, we'll put up banners for specials,
Mhm.
and then on the inside of the window, like we have now, a ceramic special. We have now hiring, because we're looking for a lot of workers, so we'll have those seasonal.
Gotcha. Thank you.
But you're welcome.
I have a question for Mr. Schneider. If we're using this memo, Mr. Schneider, as what the client is going to work off of, do we need to clarify this 10% total window area or 25%, whatever that number is? Do we need that for clarification?
My understanding is the city is not asking the commission to take any actions this evening. Is that correct, Mr. Patton?
Correct.
Okay.
So there'll be time to clarify that if you'd like that laid out.
That'd be great. I don't want to jam them up if we're talking 10%, but they do 25. I'd just like clarification, so everybody's on the same page, if that's okay.
Councilman, we'll add that to it.
Okay.
Yeah, oh yeah.
That's all I have. Anyone else? Thank you, Doug.
Okay, this request will be placed on the next planning commission meeting agenda for a vote. So it gives them some time to get your answers, and we'll vote on it next time. Gentlemen, thank you for your time.
Thank
Have a
you.
great evening.
You too.
Thank you.
You guys.
Yep.
Okay, before we go on to the next item, Mr. Percorning, I'm sorry, Mr. Burnett. Mr. Percorning?
Well, you're going to now open the meeting for a public hearing, and simply that is to,
It's already done.
I'm sorry, that was the public hearing. Pardon me.
Chris, we're going to introduce Chris.
Ms. Hopkins from CT Consultants. I'm a month ahead of time here, I'm sorry. Or 5 minutes too late. Ms. Hopkins from CT Consultants is going to come in and discuss the next agenda item that you have, which is the consideration of amendments to Chapter 1131, Chapter 1185, and Chapter 1195 of the Planning and Zoning Code. And she's here to explain the amendments to you, and then answer any questions you may have. The city is not asking for any action on this tonight. Again, this is more informational for you to consider. And next month, at your next meeting on June the 3rd, we would propose to schedule a public hearing for formal consideration and then your recommendation regarding these amendments, which needs to go back to council, and then council has a process where there's 3 readings and a public hearing before anything can be, any of these amendments, if you recommend them, can be effective. And Ms. Hopkins is on a Zoom call right now, and,
Finishing it up,
okay.
so. give her-
Mr. Picorni, I do have a question.
Sure.
If I have a suggestion to some of the language, is that to be brought up at this junction, or? is that-
Absolutely.
Okay,
No, please offer.
okay.
I would offer it to her because, you know, as we all know, Chris is, you know, an expert in planning, and your question would be good, and she could answer or provide guidance to us on how to handle that.
Okay,
So I would encourage that, please.
thank you.
Yours.
What?
Look at yours.
I know what, I'm sitting, well,
What are you trying to tell us, Mike?
I'm not trying to tell you anything. I sat in the empty seat, Mr. Chairman. Oh, goodness.
Sit Chris here.
Just gonna sit there.
You should go sit there.
Yeah, Florence will stay out.
Hi. How are you this evening?
I'm very good, thanks. How about you?
Doing well.
Okay, Chris, I just briefed the commission on why you were here, and what they told them was that you would go through the proposed amendments to each one of these sections and explain to them the reasoning behind that, and then also that if they had any questions, they should be asking them, and you would give them, answer the questions, or give them guidance on whatever concern they may have.
Okay, thank you very much. So there are three amendments being proposed, and in order to allow self-storage in an existing building. So that's the purpose of the amendment. The first amendment is being made to Chapter 1185, Table 02, 1185-02. At the bottom of the first page of the table, we're adding storage self-service as a conditional use only in the West 130th mixed-use district. So that would be the only place it would be permitted, and it would be permitted then as a conditional use. And then as a conditional use, then there's a set of conditions that have been drafted to ensure that there's very limited locations where this type of a use would be appropriately permitted, I guess you could say. And there are a number of these conditions that are in place. They are somewhat tailored to the proposed location or that's being anticipated. But in my mind, they make sense in the sense that they are not uncommon. So there are other communities that are doing very similar things. And then the third set of amendments is to Chapter 1131 definitions. So that's adding a definition for self-service storage units and then mini self-service storage units. So if I may, I'll go through then the conditions and just briefly comment on them. And then I think the definitions are pretty self-explanatory. So after I go through the conditions, then if there are any questions. So under 1195.5, we're adding a new sub-item I that deals with self-service storage units. And as I mentioned, it's It's really an adaptive reuse allowance. So it only would be permitted in a building that already exists. So the idea is that you're not going to be attracting a lot of new storage units. It's a way to reoccupy an existing building that might not otherwise have a valid reuse. And that's related to the 40,000 square feet and the 2 acre minimum area and a minimum setback of 300 feet. So the idea is that, when we first discussed establishing these mixed-use districts, the idea was to provide some regulations that made it easier to redevelop the Pearl Road and West 130th for retail and multifamily mixed uses like that. But in this situation, or a situation where the building is set very far back, 300 feet or more from the street, it's not providing that sort of, that street environment that we had talked about a couple of months ago. So as long as there's a 300-foot setback, which then allows for additional building to take place in what's currently, or what would be an existing parking lot. So that's the idea with item 1A and B. Under I2, additional single-story mini storage facilities. When you think of mini storage facilities, those are the types of buildings that have garage after garage, the overhead doors, and so you can have a single row of multiple units attached. Those are what a mini storage facility would be. And so this allowance under I2 would permit up to 20% of the ground floor area of the existing building. So there could be an additional amount of floor area constructed, so new construction, but that new building would have to be at least 300 feet back from the public right of way. Item number I3 addresses issues related to how and what types of uses can go on. Knowing that, or keeping in mind that the West 130th mixed-use district does allow retail and office uses and things like that, but it limits automotive and other sorts of production-type uses. The idea is that there are certain things that can go on, and then others that are restricted. So as long as any additional use is already permitted in the district, then that could be a dual use, but it has to be approved as part of a development plan and going through the process with the Planning Commission as part of that conditional use review. The other item is that no outdoor storage would be permitted. So it's, from my research, it's common to have a self-service storage facility also provide outdoor places for you to park an RV or a boat or things like that. And what's being proposed is that that would not be permitted. That sort of outdoor storage is not permitted.
Chris, I did have a question on that section A of number 3.
Yes.
Where it says, all items stored on site shall be kept within an enclosed building or structure. No outdoor storage items, including boats, comma, RVs, comma. I would also like to add construction equipment.
Okay.
If the rest of the
That's
commission
in
wanted-
line with what's, yeah. Okay. Okay, perfect.
Thank you.
Okay, and then under I3C, power tools, things like this, so the idea is that somebody, if they're storing, let's say they're renting a space and somehow they're able to store their car inside, which is permitted because it's not outdoor storage, but there's not going to be, or that person is not able to work on their car or anything else, their lawnmowers or whatever, so it's not doesn't become a repair facility, any of those individual storage places. The storage of hazardous materials prohibited, that's a very common provision. No place for housing or any form of residence. Based on my research, about 50% of self-storage facilities have someone living on site, so makes sense to not permit that here. And then the last one under item 3 is that there is an allowance for a sale of the contents of a unit up to 4 times a year, and that it would, that there would need to be a permit issued that's related to a temporary sales permit. Item I4, this is related to how the building is oriented and what can happen on the side of the lot if it's adjacent to a residential district. And in this case, no loading docks or exterior access. So you couldn't put loading areas off the back of the building that backed up to a residential lot. So that's the purpose of that, is to minimize the amount of activity that can go on up close to, adjacent to a residential district or house lots.
So, excuse me, Ms. Hopkins. So if there is a dock currently in the building that they're renovating, does that mean that they're gonna close off that area? Because that is I imagine behind that building has to be some type of loading area, right?
There's 2 loading areas that are presently there today. I don't believe that Hale Point has any intentions of having any kind of loading docks at all. So I imagine they would be eliminating them. But today, they're there today.
I'm just trying to kind of have a vision of how people get their goods into this building, the existing building, without taking it around the back.
Yeah, well, I don't think my understanding, I don't believe it goes around the back, that there's anything behind the building.
Just, I mean, again, just.
We can make it a conditional that if there's anything in the back that they remove it.
Yeah,
When we go to
I don't believe
recommend
that's
this
their
to
intentions at all. This is
council?
all inside storage, so it won't be that type of delivery that would be using, that type of equipment. From my
No,
understanding.
I'm just thinking if somebody's bringing their household goods in for storage, they're not gonna take them through a door that's just 2 doors that open.
Right.
Somewhere, there's gotta be a access
Yeah,
to a larger area for them to at least get to it,
Yeah.
to get in. I was just kinda curious of,
Yeah.
when you were reading, Ms. Hopkins, when you were reading the additional single-story mini storage facilities may be erected, so they're not gonna be connected. They would be erected as long as they don't exceed 300 feet, right? And then I'd imagine that we would have some sort of requirement for what the maximum height of those single storage units can be, or the mini storage units can be.
Right.
Even though they say this is what they usually are, we should probably have
Right.
a maximum height, maximum width to a mini storage area?
So, yes, and that's a good point, because right now, in the West 130th mixed-use district, the maximum building height is 60 feet.
60?
60, so.
Yeah, we don't,
But the maximum height of the ground story is 12 feet, or, I'm sorry, no, I'm reading that incorrectly, the minimum height, never mind. So there is no maximum on a single story up to the 60 feet. which is, you're not gonna get 60 feet, but
Right.
that is a consideration then, as an next.
I mean, I would think that we would want to have something that states that, what it defines a
One story.
single-story mini storage
Yep.
unit.
So they will be building those.
Well, that's what I'm saying, well, of course.
Side.
Right.
So this will go through, Mr. Schneider, this will go through us, and it'll come back to us for recommendation to council. Council will do 3 readings, public readings on this. Then it'll have to come back here to be approved on their plans. And that's when we would discuss loading docks and aesthetics and those types of questions. Am I correct in assuming that?
So ultimately, and again, this is another agenda item where no action is being asked of the commission today, but ultimately, the next step for this commission would be recommendation to council for council's consideration.
Right. And then once they've had their 3 public readings and they start moving forward, they would still have to come back through the planning commission with drawings and what they plan on doing to the property,
Correct,
correct?
correct.
Okay. So then that would be the time.
I'm just, just if,
But you're.
to me, this is the time to.
Right.
But your condition, if, what you want to do, what you're saying is you want to
In here.
maximum height, so we can do that. So we'll get that information.
Right,
For the
it could be
next
right
meeting.
in there, it could be additional single-story, mini-story facilities
Exactly,
may be
yeah.
erected up to,
Right, exactly,
right?
right.
What is behind, I can't get a vision, that's old-time pottery, the place next door to it, right?
Old MC Sporting Goods?
Yeah.
What's behind that?
Residents.
What residence would that?
Maplewood.
Maplewood.
It goes all the way back that far?
Yes.
I gotta go take a look at that.
If you want to pass this around, this does give you a little bit of the properties behind. So you can see some, what I would imagine are garages right up against
Yeah, there should only be
their rear lot
20
line.
feet, maybe, between them and the residents?
So is that?
Not even. It's right. Here's the
Yeah,
houses.
that's the house.
There's not much room back there.
I mean, it's not like you're building a new building, it's there already, so.
Correct.
And it looks like the loading actually is on the sides of the building, so
Okay.
it's on each of the side wall, towards
He
the back,
does
in the
have-
back corner.
Outside self-storage. So that'll have to change. So this looks like a way down here off to the side. And that's yeah, no, yeah.
And it's not just a loading dock, but it's also a garage, the one that should not be permitted.
I don't think we have clarification on that, right?
If they took the loading dock out and there was a garage, door, it's still.
Well,
Because you couldn't get a truck back in there. They have to be on the side.
yeah, right, right, you would not, it does not look like you could turn into and
You
pull
couldn't
out.
get a truck in there. You want to show?
No, I got it.
Up, here. He didn't want to see
The
it.
other day.
We have those.
No, okay, okay, okay.
So,
That's right.
Dennis, you will check with
Yeah.
them to see what the height of the.
Right, we'll get a number
Okay.
for everybody on that.
Okay, and then, also, and this would apply to, this Cube Smart future location, the public access, when it butts up against a residential district, then access to the site would be limited, so that, 6 AM is the earliest, and then 10 PM, it would be the latest, in terms of activity that could go on. when it's adjacent to a single-family residential district. Then under 5, fencing and screening, the concern here is, again, the visual impact from the street and what the mixed-use districts were intended to try to incentivize or encourage new development to do, and that is to bring buildings closer to the street and provide something more aesthetically pleasing and much more pedestrian friendly. So in this case, with buildings that are set back 300 feet or more, then the way 5A is written is that if these buildings are visible from the street, if there isn't enough new construction done in front of these buildings, then the planning commission can require landscaping and screening so that, and the references to the landscaping and screening in chapter 1185. So there are some screening and buffering for parking areas and that from the street. And then item 5B is restricting fencing so you cannot have barbed wire. And then item 6.
Can we stop at 5 for a second?
Sure.
So I guess this is a general question. I'm sure we can ask this again when we get to the next process, but are they going to secure the whole area like they do in many other storage where you have to have a key to get in, or?
I would think they will for the outside storage buildings.
Okay. The only reason I asked that question, Mr. Patton, is you know, yes, I'm really concerned about how 130th looks,
Right.
but I'm really concerned about the residents that abut the back of the building.
Yeah.
Because they may need to fence that as well.
Right.
And I think that we need to make sure that not only do we limit the fencing that was noted here, but I don't think that there should be any type of, it shouldn't be, we should eliminate chain link fence.
Well, the back of the building should be masonry building to begin with, that's behind these residents.
Was that?
That the building would be masonry.
No, I'm thinking that if they secure the whole, I don't know if they will,
I would
if they
think
secure it all the way around it. I don't want it to be secured to 8-foot, you know, chain link fence that somebody doesn't, I don't know what's back there now, but I wouldn't think that there is anything like that back there now.
I would think that they'd have them built where there's only a gate in the front,
Okay.
and the rest of it would be all built.
Yeah, I don't, because I don't know if they want anybody to come,
Right.
from, you know, because you can walk right in, right?
Right.
So I don't know what their
Right.
thought process is, but it would be nice to understand
Yeah.
what they're, you know, and again, I know that's another part of the process, but, you know.
Well, one additional piece of this process is we are in the early stages of, in addition to the conditional use that you're considering and the conditions you may put on this process, we're also going to have a development agreement with the developer that will recite some of the provisions we're discussing here, Ms. Hopkins is discussing, but address in addition, I know we've talked about the issue that you just raised about
Okay.
fencing and securing the entire facility.
There are requirements also in chapter 1185 that
Yeah, I was trying to look
that
at that.
address screening when lots of residential districts. So there is requirements beyond what's in this proposed regulations for self-storage units. There are requirements that would apply also. So in 118508, there's screening, and there is a requirement for a wall or a fence or some other treatment so that it is screened. And it makes sense then for the planning commission as a condition to determine whether it is a wall or a fence and the kind of fence. Those are all reasonable things for the planning commission to impose, to address in their additional conditions you can impose. And then the last item is that the Parma Heights Fire Department have access to the grounds so that if there is anything anything that would come up, then they could get inside and address from a safety standpoint.
Is there any way to change the access time to 7 AM from 6 AM? Since most commercial people don't do anything, even like picking up trash, they don't start till that period of time versus somebody being able to get on that property at 6 in the morning?
You can make it part of that condition.
Because it says 6 AM to 10 PM right
But you
now,
can-
so
You can change it.
I'm just,
This provision that you're referring to is a draft proposed amendment.
Right.
So if you choose to, as a commission, say you want to make that a different time, that's, you know, this would be the time to discuss it and do that. You're not going to decide it tonight. I'm not saying you have to do that
Right.
tonight at all, but
Right.
it's done here before this becomes before you recommend it to the city council for their consideration.
thank you.
So that's a very good question.
Yep.
Fine.
Anything else?
I just wanted to add, I agree with Mr. McCall on the 7 AM, because most of our ordinances follow, whether it's lawn cutting, construction, light construction, they all follow that 7 AM. And along with different, I believe Saturdays and Sundays were different times, but, and I don't know if you want to get that far into the weeds on it, but I concur with Mr. McCall.
Okay.
Okay. Well, I have some questions on some things that that have gone through this commission in the past, like Nathan Hale Park. Where is that standing at now? Do we have,
You want to answer it, Mike?
We are still working with the National Park Service to answer some additional questions that they have on the presentation that we made to them back last July of 2020. And there is, as you know, some, well, that's all I'm going to say about it right now. We have been in communication with the Park Service recently, and we're still waiting to hear back from them.
okay. What about the residences on Stump and Snow that we approved here? Have we heard anything back from them?
Yes, he's just getting his addresses and going to be applying for permits. Yeah, he's moving.
Moving,
Yes,
moving forward.
Did you ask him to fix the signs up there, Mr. Patton?
yeah.
I mean, the weather is pretty rough.
And last but not least, Church in the Woods, that property that we approved 5 years ago. Anything on that one?
We took everything back on that. We repealed all those approvals.
So they would have to come back through us?
Correct. There is no approvals pending there now today. So they've been repealed. We have had discussions with some other developers that are interested. That's as far as it's gotten.
Okay. Anything else? If there's nothing further, I move to adjourn.
Second.
Roll, please.
Foley,
Yes.
Litton,
Yes.
Buckingham,
Yes.
McCall.
Yes.